Yes.
Oh, and we are recording. All right, so here we go.
Is that okay, Betsy, that we record?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I promise I'll behave. All right, let me just fix my display settings here. All right, Fan, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everybody, for having Betsy and me here today from the SFUC. We're going to present on our public opinion research results, as Betsy said, and let's just dive right in. So, just in case you don't know about the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, we provide water, power, and sewer services to the city and county of San Francisco. Our water service actually goes beyond just our retail service area in the city. We also have 26 wholesale customers throughout the Bay Area, including the Peninsula, the South Bay, and the East Bay. The photos of our Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which is the primary drinking water source. But as you know, we can't 100% rely on that into the future. So we're going to talk more about what the perceptions of a new source of supply will be. But we do provide power services, primarily from our hydropower and sewer services in the city. Why don't we go to the next slide, Betsy? So this is a depiction of our regional water system. If you start from the right, you'll notice that the source and Hetchy is just our kind of primary drinking water supplies on the from Yosemite National Park, and it flows by gravity primarily down to the Bay Area and into San Francisco, which is the end of our supply line. So we're in a very vulnerable spot. But the regional water system will always be the backbone of our supply. It's a storage-based, surface water-based system, and we know that's going to be more vulnerable through climate change and also with our regulatory outlook. There's a lot of uncertainty. So for a long time, we've already anticipated that we can't rely on this source solely, that we would need to diversify our supplies. So you'll see some water droplets of different colors indicating different types of alternative water supply projects. I'll draw your attention to the green ones, which are throughout the San Francisco and the Bay Area region, showing our purified recycled water projects. And so there are two in the city, one on the east side and one on the west side. There's one further down the peninsula. That's our Pure Water Peninsula project. And then there's one hanging down there in the South Bay, which we're peripherally involved in on the planning side, but our participation is not confirmed or known right now. But we're always willing to be a party or interested party or collaborator, thought partner, or whatever, because a couple of our wholesale customers are down in San Jose and Santa Clara. So that's why we're interested in that project as well. I think you might know that as Pure Water's Silicon Valley. All right, next slide. So we haven't started doing our public opinion research recently. We've actually started doing outreach with a building pilot project, our headquarters pilot there on the left. And we've built on these earlier projects over time to get us to this point of being comfortable and being ready to do public opinion research. So our headquarters pilot project started in 2018, basically up until the shutdown. And then we also conducted internal staff focus groups. So we have a huge agency. Again, you saw all the different services we provide to our customers. So very diverse, even set of people, staff that work for us. And so we tapped our staff as a resource to do internal staff focus groups to get, a cross section of what San Franciscans and even our staff think about a new water supply source, a potable reuse project. So we use that as a way to kind of get a gauge on what are people thinking right now, what are the types of questions we should ask. And then once we felt like we had good enough information, we started building our public outreach research based on, or public opinion research based on these previous efforts. All of that would be to lead to a campaign and doing tours of our projects. And we wanted to make sure we got a good baseline before we started going out more publicly, more in a more widespread way. Next slide, please. So bringing us back to our public outreach, our public opinion research, we really wanted to take the temperature of our San Franciscans. We wanted to learn what are their current knowledge about our water system, about purified recycled water, what are their attitudes, comfort levels, um, what also do they even trust their tap water to begin with? Do they like the product they're getting from the SFPUC? Are we providing a good service to them? Because if they don't trust us now, they're not going to trust us when we introduce a new supply of water into their tap. So we want to make sure, do we have their trust now? Is there anything more we can do to gain their trust if it's not where we want it to be right now? And we also want to understand what are their barriers to accepting purified recycled water into their tap? Is this something that they will are good with now, or is there something that is preventing them from being comfortable with it? And what can we do about it? So these are the things that we wanted to learn. But at the same time, we also wanted to start the conversation. We have to introduce the concept to them. This is kind of the first time to do it in a widespread way. So we wanted to make sure we're accurately presenting what this concept is and what San Francisco might be doing about it. So it's also a way for us to interact with them and provide information to them, not just collect information back. Next slide, please. So we conducted a citywide survey. This is more of the quantitative side of the research. Betsy will go into our focus groups. This is more the qualitative side, like a deeper dive. But we really wanted to get a good sense just from a wide population where they currently are, what the temperature is. So we were able to reach out to over 1,000 San Francisco residents via phone, text, and online surveys. And we have a very diverse, multilingual city, so we made sure were able to communicate to them in the languages that they speak or are more comfortable with. And this was conducted by FM3, which I think a lot of you are familiar with, a really reputable, amazing team during the summer of last year. And we didn't create this survey from scratch. We really built it on what we saw from, FM3's previous survey with Met and others. We've built on surveys that we saw from our peer agencies in the Bay Area, including Valley Water and Alameda County Water District, and also our own surveys over time. Even though this SFPUC had never conducted a survey about purified recycled water before, we did reach out to our customers for, regularly about upcoming rates, upcoming programs, upcoming drought and water diversification initiatives. So we wanted to build on that previous knowledge in our city and also in the Bay Area and California. And then that's how we came up with our survey questions. Next slide, please. So one of the first questions whenever we reach out to the public, either in the focus groups or in these surveys, one of the first questions we ask is, what is the primary source of your drinking water every day at home? Is it from the tap or is it from bottled water or something else? We just wanted to get from that kind of like really relatable question, like where are you getting your water from? Are you comfortable with your water provider? And we were really happy to see that a big majority of San Franciscans do drink their tap water. That's a really good indication that they trust the water or enough that they won't opt out and go for, a private bottled water company. So this was a really good sign for us to start with. Next slide. So with that first question out of the way, then we introduced to them the concept of purified recycled water. So I'm going to read this, but you can read along. This is really just to give them like the first indication of what we're going to be talking to them about. So purified water is drinking water that comes from highly treated recycled water. Recycled water is wastewater that comes from homes and businesses and is treated to very high standards for reuse. Purified water undergoes additional rigorous advanced treatment and disinfection to meet and exceed drinking water quality standards. The state of California regulates the treatment of all drinking water within the state, including purified water, to ensure that it is safe and meets state and federal water quality standards. The SFPUC is exploring adding purified water into San Francisco's water supply as early as 2039. So this set the table on what we wanted to gauge the residents' comfort level on. And so when we asked them, after hearing this statement, what do you think about purified water? And we really got kind of an equal mix across the board of positive, neutral, or negative. It was about a third, a third, a third. So we wanted to understand where, who was kind of leaning into each of these positions. So from age, education, income, we found that younger populations were generally more supportive. That was pretty positive and not too surprising. And also not too surprising was that the older the age, kind of the less support that we got and a little bit more opposition. This actually aligns with what Valley Water has been seeing in recent annual surveys, that they're seeing more of an uptick in opposition from their senior population. So that's consistent, still interesting, but a little bit of a concern and something that we want to focus on. An educational level, we found that actually higher education people those that are more educated, also a little bit more opposed. So that's a bit of a concern for us as well. And then from the income side, maybe not too surprising to many people, higher education generally more higher income at home. And so this was the same group that were also more likely to oppose. Collectively, this demographic, older, higher income, more educated, are the ones that also would just straight off reference Hetch Hetchy as their source of water. They are familiar. They probably more has been living in the city longer. They're more familiar with Hetch Hetchy being, communicated as our source of water. And maybe we haven't done as great a job communicating that it's actually a blend and it's not 100% Hetch Hetchy. But that branding, that the pride that people have with Hetch Hetchy as their water supply is a real thing. And we're seeing it really with these older, more educated populations. And so we realize that we're sort of in this double-edged sword with having built up this great brand of Hetch Hetchy as this pristine snow melt that whenever we have introduced anything else to it, whether it's because we have to the way we operate our system and might have to draw from local reservoirs more, people tend to say that they notice the different tastes and smells and start questioning, is this hetchy or what's contaminating our hetchy supply? So it's a kind of a hetchy dilemma that we're saying that we have that we know we need to overcome once we introduce new supplies. Next slide, please, Betsy. So a little bit more on our findings. We also tested messages. Betsy will go into that a little bit more detail in the focus groups because we tested similar message in both the surveys and the focus groups. But our messages around resiliency and the sophistication of monitoring and technology land pretty well. Those are ones we know that will carry us further in gaining public acceptance and support. And then on the flip side, any messaging that might, suggest contamination or where people just question how safe the water is, that will be the primary concern. And we're noticing that this tends to come up more in our disadvantaged and lower income communities and communities that have historic environmental injustices. And so they already really come to the table with a lot of distrust. So that's another community that we want to focus on. And something that we found even with our staff focus groups a few years ago, the more messaging that you provide, it's the more information that's gathered, and then the comfort level rises. So we do know that sustained, consistent, reiterative messaging will help move the needle. But in this context, in the survey, just the 15-minute survey, a lot of people still remain undecided. So after the initial statement is read, we had about a third of people positive, a third negative, a third kind of in the undecided area. That didn't change as much. So that was interesting for us to learn as well. One thing that we did not specifically try to prod in the surveys, but we knew was going to be something to tackle was the fact that the need for this supply might not be as visible as the need for this for new supply if you were in Southern California. As we know, Northern California has more mild climate, maybe more rainfall, and other sources of water that, are not as imported from as far as away as if you were in Southern California. So the need for the water is a little bit harder to communicate and for people to grasp. So that's something that we know that we need to address as we move forward in our outreach. I think I have maybe one more. Okay, so I will now pass it on to Betsy for the focus groups.
Thank you, Fan. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. So, as Fan mentioned, we did these surveys, we got this data. Originally, we had set aside some one-time monies to do focus groups on how our low-income and monolingual speakers in San Francisco, given that we are such a diverse city, how they felt about their tap water. And then we got these results from the survey that showed some responses that surprised us, including that none of the messaging, we threw out a bunch of messaging to see how people responded, and we never got above 35% compelling, right? Which is not very strong. So, and we were also pleasantly surprised to hear that 86% of respondents reported drinking their tap water. So suddenly we sort of tweaked a little bit the focus groups, and instead of focusing just on their feelings about their tap water, we also included a large percentage of those focus groups to now talk about purified water. And we held 5 focus groups total. We did 4 initial ones, general population, Cantonese speaking, Spanish speaking. And when we say District 10, that is the Bayview, Hunters Point, and an area, a supervisory district in San Francisco that is traditionally low income communities, a lot of monolingual speakers there, as well as a lot of it's a historic environmental justice community. And then we saved one to have in the bank in case we needed it, and we needed it. And so then some of the messages still didn't land, and we still had trouble. And we went back and scrubbed everything and went back for a 5th focus group and to see if we could do better. And we did. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, I want to talk about the term purified water and the focus group. So what we did initially and was tell people share their associations with the term purified water. What does this mean to you? And then after people talked about that, they then followed up with a definition, which was very similar to the definition that Fan read out. And then we asked people their thoughts, and it didn't go well. People said it was ambiguous. It sounded like marketing. It said we appeared to obscure the real source of the water supply. It generated so many questions in some of the focus groups that it literally almost derailed. Like people couldn't get their head around it. Like it was dramatic. And it took a really skilled moderator to like bring people back in. And it really, what it did in the end is it eroded trust. People had such a problem with this. They thought we were hiding something. They said, this is marketing. You guys are hiding something. It did not go well. We had a skilled moderator who kind of poked around a little bit to say, well, what terminology would sound good to you? What might be better for you? And so we landed on the term purified recycled water. And again, we know purified water is a term that the industry uses and we all use. We also know that some of you also use purified recycled water, so that's good. So we tried this. Same format. We asked participants to share their associations with the term purified recycled water, followed by the exact same definition, and see how they felt. And the shift was notable. People had much fewer clarifying questions. They had an immediate understanding and grasp of the definition. And they said this was a much more transparent identification of the source of the water that we were providing. Because people kept saying, purified water, but where is that coming from? I don't understand. Purified recycled water, they understood immediately. So in the future, and you've already heard Fan mentioning this, I think, in her discussion, when we in the future will be talking about the source of water that we are providing, we will use the term purified recycled water. We will also keep Pure Water SF, Pure Water Peninsula, all of our pure water things. We want to be consistent with what the industry is doing. But for at least San Francisco residents and customers, this term went over much better, and that's what we will be using going forward. So let's talk about message testing. And I want to go into this a little bit, and I'm hoping that this is helpful to you. So we took the top 5 messages from the survey that performed the best, and none of them got above 35%. So we know we needed to work on this some more. But we said, okay, we're gonna hone in on the messaging, these top 5, and see how good we can get them. So in general, statements that focused on across all the English speaking, Spanish speaking, and Cantonese speaking participants, the strongest elements of this message were the ideas of they liked reliability and local control, which I think, and preparing for emergencies, there's sort of jibe with the idea that we as the water agency should be preparing for emergencies and for water supply reliability. Um, Without a clear explanation of the problem, participants had a lot of difficulty understanding what our messages were asking them to accept and why it was relevant to them. So across all of the groups, they kept saying, but what problem are you trying to solve? I don't understand the problem. So really, I think context was really important, and messages that didn't have a clear connection to the why really struggled. And I'm going to get into the safety messages a little bit more detail later, but we packaged all of the safety messages into one large message, and people were skeptical of it. They were like, your people were highly sensitive to anything that felt like marketing, and they really pushed back a lot. We also in San Francisco expected that, and we know that people are proud of the city's green policies and how green we are. So we expected that any messaging that included ecosystem benefits and climate change would do well. And they did not. They did poorly, in fact, and sometimes it backfired even. People thought those just general references to these things were too vague. They were too disconnected to their reality. People really were skeptical sometimes of the premises that we were using. It didn't go well, and those were not the best. Those just in and of themselves were not successful messages. And lastly, and this is not surprising to any of you communicators, it is not possible to have a one size fits all message. Different audiences responded to different messages in different ways, right? Their view of their tap water was strongly formed by their lived experiences with their tap water and also their community. So we know going into the future that we will have to use a lot of different tools in our toolbox and a lot of different types of messaging to reach our audiences. But I did want to go into a little bit about how we arrived at some messages and what that looked like. So there was the message we called the future generations message, which we know in the surveys and in our previous sort of unofficial polling, people liked future generations. Who doesn't like that? Drought messaging, these were always very strong. So here was our original message. Stricter state policies require reduced reliance on rivers and streams for our drinking water, so we owe it to future generations to invest in a local, reliable supply of drinking water. So we had in the first 4 focus groups, participants give this a green dot if it resonated with them, a yellow dot said somewhat resonates with me, red dot doesn't resonate with me at all. And as you can see, it didn't do that great. We got a lot of red dots. Overall, there was a little bit of varied reaction, but the core issue was consistency. They didn't understand what this policy meant, what the heck the state of California had to do with anything about their drinking water. And they didn't really understand exactly what policy and how it affected them. People cited the lack of clarity and the description as being vague. Cantonese speaking groups said, but we get our water from rivers and streams. I don't understand even what you're talking about. And the District 10 or environmental justice communities found this to be actually manipulative. And they said, we don't appreciate, we owe our future generations. They really didn't like that. And again, we worked so hard to come up with these messages, and to watch them be eviscerated in a group setting at first was a little bit, I don't know, we almost had hurt feelings, but then we actually appreciated it because we were like listening to them sort of pick this apart, and we were like, fair point. That isn't great. What were we thinking, right? So we went back and we scrubbed and we tried again for a 5th focus group, and this is where this message ended up. The state of California will severely restrict how much water will be available from San Francisco's primary water source. For us and future generations, adding purified recycled water protects against water shortages. So again, we're looking at green, yellow, and red dot, and we only got 1 red dot, and that person didn't like the word severely. And they said, severely sounds like half. And we were like, it is half. And they were like, oh my God. So anyway, for the most part, this resonated much more. The problem solution structure gave participants a reason why we were doing this. They appreciated the clarity of the message. We were more specific. And so we had the state of California, this is our primary water supply. This is how purified water is in this, and it's going to solve water shortages. So you're going to see this again and again in what we're talking about, that the problem solution connection to you paradigm, which seems obvious right? But anyway, is really what drove this. So the second message that we wanted to talk about was safety. So in our unofficial focus groups, in our surveys, the issues of safety of the purified recycled water came up again and again. So we said, let's lead with the safety message. So here's our safety message. It's safe, clean drinking water regulated by the state of California under some of the strictest standards in the world. We're run by trained, certified operators, continuously monitored with lab testing so sensitive it can detect one drop of contamination in 20 Olympic swimming pools. We thought this was going to do great. It did not do great. Um, when presented with this, it always triggered skepticism, to be honest. Participants in the English speaking, Cantonese speaking, and environmental justice groups questioned what these claims meant. They said they sounded like marketing. They said that sounds hyperbolic. Some people said this drop in 20 swimming pools thing sounds fake to me and too superlative. They pushed back on it and they said, I don't believe any of this. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is all bad, right? So there were some people, the Spanish language groups responded better to it, but everybody else really didn't like it at all. And so what we learned was this was too much of a good thing at once, and then people ended up pushing back. Fair point. Also, leading with the safety message, people were like, well, why do you keep telling me it's safe? That means it's not safe, right? So we realized that this was probably not going to be a successful primary message in any of our messaging. So on the fifth focus group, we did it this way. We said, okay, I'm going to read you one statement, and you tell me whether or not it makes you feel more comfortable or less comfortable about purified recycled water. And every single one, except for the last one, which I'll talk about in a second, said they felt more comfortable. So really what this told us was it's not that safety wasn't a concern. It was a concern, but it's that people needed time to ingest these very specific, very technical points we were giving them one at a time. And if we threw too much at them at once, it felt hyperbolic and like marketing. But if we, each and every one of these, they were looking at individually, they could absorb it, they could look at it, they were much more successful. The one thing about purified water, the comparison with bottled water was very interesting to us, that most people felt less comfortable. And I think it raised an issue about credibility and drinking water and bottled water. It was very interesting. They thought that bottled water was sort of impure anyway, and it was connected to plastic. And they said you're connecting it with bottled water, and they didn't like that at all, which was interesting because we thought, well, you trust bottled water. So again, a learning lesson for us at least, is what messages would resonate. And so these did much better, again, as sub messages. So that's what we're going to do in the future. So then we talked about needing to identify the barriers. And so thought we would do it in their own words from either the focus groups or the surveys. You can read these yourself if you want to. My favorite one is the SantaCon one, to be honest, which really, I think, people not understanding where their water comes from in San Francisco. And basically, there's either the pure Hetch Hetchy or SantaCon, and there's no in between to them, right? Interesting that cost came up only as a sort of a secondary. It did not come up at all in the surveys, but it came up as sort of a secondary concern in the focus groups, particularly around the monolingual and the environmental justice communities, about the equitable distribution of the cost of this and also equitable distribution of the water. Also, people taste was another issue that did not come up as a primary driver in the surveys, but they came up as a strong secondary driver in the focus groups. So this was pretty much like, is it safe to drink? Okay. And if it tastes okay, then I'll drink it. So that's really kind of how the order came to us, which again, had we done just surveys, we wouldn't necessarily have picked up this pull through information to know that we do need to address taste. This is not something that we can ignore, of course, but it was more of a driver than we had originally thought, which was interesting. So then we asked folks, well, what would make you more comfortable about drinking purified recycled water? And so this is sort of in reverse order on the bottom, but 72% said they'd be more comfortable sharing frequent data on San Francisco's water quality, the dark blue being much more comfortable, the light blue being somewhat more comfortable, the gray being makes no difference. And then we have a little bit of somewhat less comfortable, much less comfortable, and don't know. 69% said provided detailed information on the purification process and testing. And then we have 63% conduct purified water taste tests throughout the city. So again, the taste came up in the top three, but it wasn't the top, which was interesting to us because it just keeps coming up again and again. And this is, by the way, is from the survey, but the data was consistent with the focus groups as well. And the last one was provide tours of water purification facilities to the public. Now, we think this one is so low because we don't have anything, we haven't had anything to tour the public through in San Francisco since before the pandemic. So really, when we start bringing other facilities online that Fan mentioned, we're really hoping that this number might change. But either way, you still have a significant 1/4 or 1/2 of people who are still gray. Makes no difference. I don't know, which means these gray folks, this is who we need to go after. So then we asked folks, well, who would you feel comfortable hearing about purified recycled from? So trusted messengers, scientists, physicians, and I think this is consistent with what others have seen, county and local agencies, non-governmental organizations. The environmental justice groups really preferred watchdog organizations, whereas some of the other groups might have mentioned like the Sierra Club or environmental organizations. So who those third-party messengers are might be different depending upon who you talk to. What did not come across as strongly in the surveys, but came across so strongly in the focus groups was who the distrusted messengers were. Any elected official, like our mayor is pretty popular here in San Francisco. It doesn't matter. They were like, if you're elected, I don't want to hear from you at all. And we anticipated in the Bay Area that there would be a distrust of the federal government. We were not expecting such a huge amount of distrust in the state government as well. So when we were proudly touting these things of, well, it's state regulated, they were like, I don't care about the state, right? It was very interesting, the distrust of any kind of government from the state and federal level and private companies, which again is not a shocker. But the good news is people who they do trust is us. They said that they do trust their local departments of public health and their local water providers as someone to tell them up-to-date and good information about purified recycled water. So that's the good news. So in summary, what we learned, the resilience frame formed best. Any messaging that we did had to have a clear problem statement, concrete solution, and benefit to our customers in it to be successful. That magic sauce was really it. Our customers are more sophisticated than we gave them credit for, and they are sensitive to marketing and very distrustful. And they rightfully called us on language that was a little too vague or a little too hyperbolic, or maybe not as precise as it should have been. If you're using safety messaging, at least here, we needed to make sure it has specificity. It's interesting when people like that guy from SantaCon comment, people interpret you have all HECI water and then they're looking at purified recycled water is all purified recycled water. They panicked and they really had high opposition. But if we got past that barrier and we said, this is not a significant change, this is strengthening the current system by adding one source to other sources that we already have. So this is one of our multiple sources. People reacted differently, which again makes sense, but it's interesting that we really needed to get over that initial hump. If you're going to talk about ecosystem benefits and climate change and your audiences are receptive to that, for us, at least in the current environment, that in and of itself was not sufficient and it was too abstract. People kind of pushed against that. But if you use that in context and you have a concrete connection to the problem and the solution and how it benefits them specifically, did much better. Lastly, as we said before, our all messages are not created equal, and we're going to have to use different messaging and different messengers depending upon what groups we're talking to. And I will say it's pretty, people wanted to hear from different people, multiple people, and in multiple ways, which again is best practice for us anyway, but it's good to know that they continue to want to do that. So very quickly, where do we go from here? We're going to take all this wonderful information. We're going to build out some campaigns. We're going to deploy them in community until we have a facility in our building, which hopefully will be in a few years. We're going to try to build a desktop demonstration facility thing for folks to look at this, and we're going to do this as many times as we can. We're going to continue to check in with our audiences who will continue to engage with us, and we're going to do some more surveys in some years to see if we've moved the needle. We're going to take that engagement, we're going to adjust it, and we're going to start again. And we're going to keep at it until we get going. So with that, I want to thank you very much for listening to us today and happy to answer any questions or just turn off our mics. So thank you.
Wow, Fan and Betsy, that was amazing. That was great. Thank you both for taking the time to share with this group today. And so at this time, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to come on camera. So unfortunately, we don't have a Q&A or a comment box here. We had a Zoom incident. I was telling others at our agency, so we've increased security here on this platform. But next time we do hope to host the meeting on Microsoft Teams and kind of see what works best for everyone. But would love to hear thoughts, observations, or questions.
Gina, I can ask a question.
Yeah.
One. Um, so Betsy and Fan, in one of your focus group statements, you mentioned like the state of California was going to put these additional restrictions on you, so you're going to lose your Hetch water by 50%. But then later you found out that folks don't actually trust the state government. Any thoughts or like additional insights on that statement? You know, especially considering the lack of trust from people on the state government, what do you think happened there that made that statement really resonate? And then another thing, this is just a comment from me. It's incredible what percentage of your communities drink tap water. To see that number at 80%. I think usually, I don't know, in our service area, it's just like over 50-ish%, 60, something like that. So that's really remarkable to see that and just see how much people love Hetch water. That's your source, your tap water. That's cool.
Thank you. I will say it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because now they're like, what? A new source of supply? Absolutely not. I'm going to die. So that's the back end of that, for sure. I don't know, Fan, if you have any thoughts on the state stuff. I think when we were specific about what the state was doing, because really for us, it's the Bay Delta Plan Amendment, which we can't, like, do you have 45 minutes, people, we can go into it, not here, but you know what I mean? So it was really trying to explain it in a really concrete way, but in a really short way. Again, trying to get to that problem solution connection paradigm. Yeah, people were receptive, which with the regulations, I guess, and the state of California regulates this, but only as a sub message and only tangentially. We couldn't lead with it. The state's doing it, so we're doing it. They're like, but at least I think it was as a third party source amongst others supporting us. I think they felt better with it, if that makes sense. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We know we can't lead anything with the state, whether it's the state, something that we're supporting with the state or the state is kind of putting down on us. We almost have to tackle it as if it's a universal issue, climate change. We know why the state is coming out with the Bay Delta Plan Amendment. We all have similar goals. So I think if we point to a shared goal rather than referencing it's the state or it's necessarily regulations, I think climate change, even though we've had a little bit of, some people think our messaging around climate change is too vague, but I think we all understand that there are uncertainties and risks, and that for any emergency response, it's because we're responding to something that we couldn't plan for. So I think if we change that to point to something that's more universal, then we might have more success. But we haven't really thought about, I don't think we've really thought about how we were going to rewrite that specifically. But the thing that we learned about the big compiled messages and breaking it into bite-sized pieces, I think we can apply that learning to even these like regulatory or climate change uncertainties. It's almost like we have a broad universal statement, and then we have like these nested or sub messages, kind of like the smaller bites for the safety messages. It's more like, okay, so what's so uncertain? There's state regulations or whatever. It's like, okay, what's the state regulations? And then for those that are actually have the willingness and the bandwidth to read more, then they can read about the Bay Delta Plan Amendment. So I think it's like leading them, whatever, choose your own adventure. What of these do you want to find out more about? Is it safety? Is it the regulations? Is it the treatment process? Then we always have a way for them to get more information from a trusted source like us or a third party or an NGO or a watchdog. So I think we know we have to give them something. At least we're trying to make sure they're not scared away, but more like either agnostic or interested. If you're interested, we have a path for you to find more information that's correct and not fake information. So I think that's what my big takeaway from, leading them down a path rather than like throwing something out there all at once.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
great. Yeah, and go ahead. Danny, I see your hand up. Go ahead and we are an informal group, so please, anyone take the floor.
Hi, I'm Lenny Chavez, not Danielle Birch. I'm
Oh,
not really sure how that means.
oh my goodness, technology. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I know a few people here, so hello to those of you who are familiar. Lenny Chavez with Coral Engineers. Thank you so much for this work. I want to um, send that out very genuinely because it takes so long to get to this stuff, right? So it's very valuable to every one of us. And I second Rupam's thing. 80% of the people in your service area drink tap water. That's awesome. That's really great. And I agree that might be a double-edged sword, but we're starting off good. You guys made a comment that was a little bit confusing to me. Did someone say that they knew that the water was coming from lakes and rivers, but they didn't understand what the connection with, I suppose, the agency was, or why we are bringing that up? I guess I'm thinking, is the public really not aware that there's a step in between the water that we take out of the lakes and rivers and we put in their tap? And is that something worth exploring with them?
Yeah, I think that was the one of the messages from the focus groups about the future generations. And I think that first sentence in the statement referenced we get most of our water from rivers and streams, and that's being less of that is becoming available. So I think there is a disconnect to your second point about people not understanding the steps it takes to get the from the water source, how it travels into our system, and then it goes through maybe some drinking water treatment before it gets delivered to the tap. So there is what we know is there's a large part of our city that's educated and very savvy about their water supply, and then there's those that are not for different reasons. So we know that we want to build up everybody's foundational knowledge of their water system, and this is, I think, true for all water utilities and their customers. Like the value of water, it takes so much, and that's what their rates are going for to sustain kind of that baseline level of service, and then we want to make sure that our customers are familiar with that because whatever we add on top of that, we want that foundation to be strong so that they know why we're doing more on top of that in addition to. So I think a lot of the work that we're going to be doing in the coming years is really just raising that level of understanding so that we're all starting from a common place and that trust is there. And then we can start explaining why, or at least, when we explain why we're adding something new, that they understand why. So we do need to, bridge that disconnect from the rivers and streams to what's coming out of their tap. I also think that message, the misunderstanding was coming from, I think, the Cantonese speaking population. And that was the group that we found was very much more opposed or not. They didn't resonate with environmental messaging. That was the group that was specifically kind of like questioning just future generations? We're just as valuable today. We're just as valuable as, the species in the streams or those that are others depending on the streams that are, humans count too. So that was interesting to us, and it really showed how specific your messaging has to be to whatever community you're speaking to. And again, it's just the same thing about what Betsy was saying about no message can really fit all needs. We really do we're trying not to be so like cherry picking and we really don't want to come off as marketing and really like I'm only telling this to you because you're the only one that will respond this way, but we do have to be cognizant of like how we communicate to these different communities and people with different lived experiences. So it's really it's a big challenge. Yeah.
And I think it
Right.
was our fault for using a vague statement like reducing our reliance on rivers and streams as opposed to reducing the amount of our water supply. We didn't make the connection to them.
Mm.
So, not that they wouldn't have known that their water didn't come from rivers and streams, but we didn't make the connection for them. And so they were calling us out on it, and fair, right? So the messaging really had to connect to them directly. It is going to decrease our water supply available. And then they got it. Do you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
were assuming they were making the leaps with us and they weren't. And fair, we should make them for them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's very insightful.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I thought this was a really great presentation. I really liked hearing how you guys were like iterating through the process and like, oh, hey, we heard this. Like, how are we gonna find out more about that? And I'm wondering, when you're making these plans for this type of outreach, there's a bit of a chicken and egg with the focus group and the survey, and which one is going to inform which one and which one do you put first? Kind of being on the other side of that, would you order those the same, or would you change that to get more information for one or the other?
Actually, I would do it the same way again. I think because we were able to see the quantitative data and the numbers, and also see the messaging and see how it responded, but then be able to delve deeper into the themes that we thought we saw in the surveys, but we weren't sure. And asking questions like, why isn't cost coming up? Why is taste not rising to the top? And we could kind of then poke at that more in the focus groups and get deeper. So I think, and I'm not sure how many more focus groups we're going to have on our budget, to be honest, but if we were to do it again, I would do it the exact same order. It's a good
That's
question.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add something to that. So, I mentioned that we did staff focus groups a few years ago, and one of the things we did and learned from that was I think we tested like 8 to 10 different messages, and our facilitator actually recommended, hey, one of these focus groups, we should switch two of the messages around. Let's see if the order of it changed anything. And it didn't really change anything. The pattern that we saw there, the trend that we saw was just no matter the order of the messages, just the fact that once by message 7 or 8, I'm just making that up, but the further along and the more messages you provide, the more you're seeing support or comfort level increasing. So it was just the fact that you're like telling them, kind of reinforcing positive messaging. That's what people respond to more than the individual statements. Though in these focus groups, the citywide one, we did do more prodding. So we got more insight by doing that. We didn't do it to that level, I don't think, in the staff focus groups.
I have a question. This was incredibly well done. And I think it's something that our larger membership could really benefit from hearing, regardless of whether you're charged with doing a focus group or really, doing that type of work. I think this is a really important topic. And I know we hear all the time, it's not a one size fits all solution. I know we're all well versed in that, but I think you hit on some really important messages. Have you all done any outward facing kind of summaries or anything that we might be able to share?
Yeah, so we've been getting a lot of those requests. We are preparing to package something that can be shared externally with you all, and with if anybody from our community asks for it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it would be like, and particularly because I know others have asked, what questions did you ask in your survey? Because we built our survey based upon other people's questions. So we all stand on each other's shoulders, right? So we will share the questions and the numeric numbers of response. And then our focus groups consultant, Interethica, wrote us a very comprehensive report, which is based upon all of that and summarizes things and talk about like how they did it and some of the questions they asked. So we'll share all that.
Thank you.
Well, and hopefully you'll be at the California WateReuse conference.
I was just about to say that. So if there's anybody here that's on the committee to choose, we have
Fan is putting in a plug for an
abstract. It's in there. So
I may have some insider knowledge, but
all right.
announcements should be going out either tomorrow or Tuesday. So
Okay.
if by the end of the day on Tuesday you haven't heard anything, ping me and I'll
Okay.
All right. And we promise it'll be more. We've got so much data that we keep changing up the slide deck. So it won't be boring.
It's more of a panel than, in my opinion, I think this is a panel conversation rather than a technical. You can't do this in 30 minutes. So I need to go back to the drawing board a little bit, but I think this is a really valuable topic
Yeah.
I think if we did some good outreach, we could have a packed house for this session.
I agree, Brunley. And something that we were talking about, I think on Monday, right? Monday, maybe at 10 a.m. will be the meeting of the Communications Collaborative for WateReuse California at conference. And a few of us on the leadership committee were talking that it would be actually really great to see survey data over the years. So I know like starting from like 2000, right? We have Soquel Creek that has done a survey. We have Met, we have San Diego, we now have San Francisco. I know Megan from Hazen and Sawyer said she's working with LADWP, and we don't know if they're at a point where they could share, but so many agencies are doing surveys, and it's just such good information. I was looking up some information from Megan, for Megan yesterday, and for those of you who don't know, Ron Wildermuth was he's a legend in the comms industry, and for OCWD, he really laid the foundation for our robust communications. And I was looking at data from like the late 90s, early 2000s. There were things in our focus surveys. We had like focus, phone, and also focus, phone, and I can't remember the other one. But purified was a word that came up there. And so, Betsy, when you had told me that maybe you received some information that purified was maybe not the best word, but now I kind of understand what you're saying. And I think when we use purified, we use it to say this, we use it a lot. We don't use treatment, right? Because the negative connotation with treatment and cancer, disease. But we do use the word purified a lot. But also, I think in kind of the Ron literature and that survey data, it was really saying just be very plain and transparent about the source water. So it's treated sewer water. So it's just interesting because some of these things I think are still kind of on par today. Some things have changed, but we were thinking it'd be a really great communications meeting to have a panel of all these folks that have done survey and kind of share lessons learned. What are commonalities? What's different? What would you do differently if you had another chance to do it? So that was a thought for the meeting on Monday at conference.
I love that. And just here's my pitch, but you don't have to take it. We had somebody do a survey to utility staff across the state, and he ended up getting a lot of GMs. I was pretty impressed that he was able to get those response rate, but he has some interesting data that could be worth bringing up. So just happy to make that connection or not if you have a full agenda, but I'm happy to help if you need anything.
Oh, great. Now we're excited. And actually, we have Natalie on the call. She is from National. She's our outreach chair. And then we have Ben, our director of communications from National. And we had a meeting earlier this week, I believe, Ben, and we were talking about surveys, and National's doing a huge effort trying to collect survey data. So I wanted to give the floor to Ben to talk a little bit about this because this is something that would help everyone.
Sure, definitely. Thank you all. And wow, Betsy and Fan, thank you. That was a really just excellently reported, obviously very excellently executed, but also very nicely reported presentation. So thank you. And it's fun to be back on the phone with Betsy. We used to work together back in the day. Yeah, so some of the things that Brenly that you were calling out, I just want to mention we've made a little bit of an effort at the national level as well, and I'd love to bring everyone on this call and on the fold on that, which is like I haven't absolutely created what the format is I can present this back out in yet, but I've been asking members at our national association level for a couple of years now, whenever I catch wind, like, hey, can you send me your public sentiment survey info? And I have a running folder. So that includes a lot of these California ones we've all mentioned on the call, as well as, one focus groups from Boise and from El Paso, Texas, and from Florida, which actually does statewide surveying effort some years back on potable reuse. And it's not really apples to apples, and people were comfortable with sending different levels. So in some, I just got the board PowerPoint that was presented, and in others, I've got like the crosstabs. But anyone I think who's on this call, I'd be fairly comfortable. I have shared a lot of that back out with other members, so definitely get in touch with me if there's something specific you're looking for. And it's been a little bit of a goal of mine to actually try to I've started a sort of like document where I'm trying to draw out some actual like here are the questions, here are the percentages that are landing in different places. So I'd love and any thoughts and feedbacks on what's useful there. In the short term, if anyone on this call has done a survey and hasn't sent it to me yet and is comfortable doing so, I'm going to put my email in the chat and would love to get more of those. And just a segue to the fact that this call and SFPUC's presentation inspired us to basically take this same topic on for our National Communications Committee meeting in July, which you all are invited to, of course. And I know there's been a lot of overlap between this group and that, but I think we can learn a lot from each other. So that meeting will be July 15th at 10:30 Pacific time. It's on our events calendar on our website, but we let me just put, oh, we don't have a
We
chat.
don't
You
have
know
a chat,
what?
but Ben, just send it to me
We'll
and
send
I'd
an
be
email.
happy to send it
I'll
to the
send all
group.
this.
Okay.
Perfect. I'll send
Okay.
all this that I'm mentioning in an email afterwards because I have a couple things that I was going to reference. So
Great.
that's the main thing. Would love to have you at that meeting. We're still pulling together the agenda for that, but we think we might get Richard Bernard from FM3, who SFPC worked with, to speak to the group, as well as maybe we'll pull together a little panel. Would love to have someone from this talk, but also we're going to kind of try to get a conversation going. What are the questions? What are the strategies you need to actually get one of these done, internally, and some of the other topics that come up. So
Yeah,
that's
hopefully
the
it'll be a really
FMT.
good follow-up to this conversation. So even if I think you've been obviously all of you in the room today, but I think that there'll be something different to be gleaned from that conversation. It'll be a nice follow-up. So I hope you all attend.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben and Natalie.
Oh, and if
Brenly,
you don't,
go
if you
ahead.
don't mind, I'll send this out by email too. But I just wanted to also mention one other thing, which is we are going to have a webcast at the national level. Taking a step back, I know we're also fired up to talk about potable reuse communications, but a lot of our members are still doing a lot of talking to their stakeholders about non-potable reuse, and getting, especially in other parts of the country, getting new industrial and irrigation users on. So we're gonna have a webcast about the challenges and strategies there, also in July. And so I'll put that in the email as well, Gina, that we can send out to everyone.
Amazing. Thank you for
Cool.
sharing all that great information. All right, Brenly, you are up to give an update. And hopefully you're able to share your screen. You're muted.
Okay. Well, step one, I can share my screen. So I feel like, like I have a win
Yay.
to celebrate right now. And that was a tough act to follow. Again, just really, really well done. I loved that presentation and I'm excited to see what other kinds of conversation that this spurs. So I will be brief in my updates too. I'll have just a few updates around some organizational updates. We'll talk about the conference and I'll have time for any questions for you all. So I kind of just like to show you all what we're working on. And it's been a really interesting year, I think, budget-wise at the state, what's going on with governor, budget, all of those things. It's been an interesting time. So I'll try to be brief here, but under our advocacy and regulatory updates, this is the first year where we are seeing the policy amendments that we worked on last year. And as a reminder to you all, we worked on some clean water SRF policy amendments that would essentially allow recycled water projects. When you apply for funding under the Clean Water SRF, there is now different amendments that would score a recycled water project differently and potentially higher. So this is the first year under these new policy amendments. So we're excited to see how this turns out. The current slate of projects is being evaluated right now. And so we are really interested to see what happened, if anything, and especially given the budget. The budget is similar this year as it has been in previous years, but we expect that to change with federal funding really being slashed next year. There's been funding that has been coming each year that we will likely not get into the future. So we are trying to look creatively about what we can do to find other pots of money. So stay tuned on that, but I think the next few years will be challenging budget-wise under the Clean Water SRF and the Recycle Water Funding Program. AB 2777 is our co-sponsored bill with CASA. This is around also the Clean Water SRF program. We have been working to essentially add flexibility to the Clean Water SRF program. So for a larger project, to potentially take more money, it's optional. You do not have to take that additional funding, but this would essentially increase the cap of what you could take. You would pay a higher interest rate if you took that, but it would allow you to essentially get more funding at still at a lower market rate for interest. So we see this as a positive thing. And we will see, how we do with AB 2777 throughout the year. But it has so far been on consent agenda for every committee, so we're very happy and pleased about that. SB 1157, Making Conservation a California Way of Life. There are ongoing work being done right now. Very technical, very academic. If any of you are on any of those taps, we are in the mode of analyzing all of the data. Earlier this year, 3 surveys went out, and they are still analyzing that data right now. So stay tuned on that. And then Prop 4 fund allocation, that has been it is in the process of being dispersed. So we expect one more tranche of funding for next year. Just a few committee updates, just moving to the center of the screen here. We know we all have restructured the what we're calling our potable reuse committee, and under the potable reuse committee is a DPR subcommittee. They will be kicking off officially next week on Wednesday, the 27th at 1 o'clock Pacific time. We would love it if you could join us. You'll hear from Joaquin Esquivel, the chair of the State Water Board, and you'll also hear from the leadership of the full committee. So we're really excited. This is getting kicked off, and it's taken quite a bit of effort, but we've received so much interest in this. So if you haven't and you would like to attend, we sent out a membership announcement. I believe it was yesterday, and it has a link that you can fill out, submit your information, and we will follow up with a Zoom invite link for you all. And then most of you are fairly active in our chapters. One side project I've been working on with input from our Northern California chapter and our Los Angeles chapter is defining and refining our governance for our 7 chapters. There was definitely a patchwork quilt of different models. And so we're hoping that this new document can help to unify everyone, and we all are going to be working from or singing from the same hymn book, if you will. We are busy at work with the annual conference. You heard me earlier that notifications are going out either late this week or early next week. So we're really excited about that. And then in the coming weeks, you will start to see a few updates from our new AMS system upgrade. So there could be a little bit of work to do on your part, making a new username, password, those types of things, but we will be following up with more information later in June. And another item that we are hard at work on is some case studies around different funding mechanisms and the economic benefits of potable reuse projects. So we hope to have those finished and wrapped up by the conference as well. And then we are really excited to announce our partnership with both the Water Research Foundation on the conference, but also the Cal Nevada AWWA state section. We are really excited about that because of our conference. Largely our operators are an underengaged part of our water reuse community. And we see this partnership as an opportunity to work more closely with our operators and also be able to provide them some value. So I will move along to this. This is just kind of a messy slide, but I do want to focus in on this part right here. So please do tell your operator friends that we will be offering contact hours for the first time for the operator track. So normally we offer 5 simultaneous tracks. This year we will be offering 6. So there will be a dedicated operator track. So we are really excited about this. As of right now, we have 96 technical presentations, 8 panels, a WRF workshop, two tours, and as Gina mentioned, in-person committee meetings before the conference begins. So you won't have to choose between going to a session or going to your committee meeting. So we're hoping that this helps broaden the participation from all of the committees. And there will also be an opportunity for us to come together along with the Permitting and Compliance Committee and the DPR Implementation Committee. So we see this as a great opportunity to bring everyone together. And we are also doing something a little bit fun. It wouldn't be a WateReuse California conference if we didn't. So we, for the first time, we're going to be offering something called the Reuse Rumble. And there will be more on this soon, but we are doing a competition on stage Monday afternoon, and that will help us to kick off the conference. On Tuesday, we will have our keynote speaker, Tammy Jo Schultz. She was in the news a couple years ago. She's really going to be speaking about leadership, overcoming challenges, and creating a team really quickly. She landed a plane that, by all accounts, probably should have crashed. And she was also, had to overcome a lot of no's in her life as a woman pilot. So this is, I think, going to be a really interesting talk. Moving over into the screen, we do have a few sponsorship opportunities still available if your organization or agency wishes to do that. Brian Ray will be your contact, or you can just email me as well, and I can get you to where you need to go. We have sold out our highest level sponsorship opportunities. Those are now gone. They are first come, first serve basis. And we are definitely excited for our Blue Diamond level plenary session that will be held on Tuesday afternoon during the lunch. Carollo competed for this and won, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation around AI. The session title is Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto. So definitely make sure you're there for that one. And as I mentioned, speaker notifications this week or next. Award notifications will be submitted first week in June. So you'll hear from us if you were successful. And I do just want to mention our early bird registration closes May 29th. So this is my call to all of you to register. This is your opportunity to secure the lowest rate and also book your rooms. We are over 50% full. These rooms will go fast. We negotiated a very attractive rate. It's at the Hyatt Embarcadero. So if you attended the conference a couple of years ago, it's at that same venue. But the rate for registration and the hotel room is very attractive. So I do suggest you to register for your rooms sooner rather than later. And if you run into any issues booking a room or anything like that, you can reach out to myself or Brian Ray. We've had a couple of challenges with the hotel. They've done some updates and things don't refresh as quickly as we would like them to. So please do let us know if you run into any issues. And then while I have you all, this is also your save the date. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, it's a much different time of year that we normally do. In 2027, we will be in October, and this will actually be a Wednesday through Friday. So it's a much different flow, and it's a much different time of year. So I just want to get this on your radar now so you can mark your calendars here, and you can expect some similar technical presentations, but there may also be an opportunity to expand our offerings. So I'll pause there. I went through that pretty quickly, but I'm happy to take any questions about our committees or conference or anything else.
Thank you, Brenly. Great information. I'm excited for conference. And I did want to let everyone know too that the meeting of the Communications Collaborative Group will be on Monday, the 26th, tentatively at 10 a.m. in San Francisco. So we'll work together on that. If anyone else has any questions or if any members of the leadership committee want to come on and share any updates. All right, I think everyone's at a stopping point for the meeting, ready for lunch maybe. Okay, so if no one else has any final questions, hopefully we'll see many of you at conference. And we will be in touch. Thank you, Ben and others, for joining us from National, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks,
All right.
Gina.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye.
Thursday.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.